The text came through at exactly 3:47 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. Family celebration tonight, 7 p.m. sharp. Important news about the expansion. Do not be late. Dad. I stared at my phone in the middle of my office, and a slow, involuntary smile pulled at the corner of my mouth. It had been 8 months since any of them had spoken to me. 8 months since the day I stood alone on a stage during my company's Series B announcement, pretending not to care that the people I expected to see in the audience never bothered to show up. Jason had sent a text that morning that read, "Can't make it networking event. You understand." Tyler stayed loyal to silence. Mom had offered a thin excuse 2 hours before the press conference. "Your father isn't feeling well. We will celebrate your little project another time, sweetie." But Dad had felt perfectly well the same weekend when he attended Tyler's influencer launch party. I had seen the photos, all smiles and champagne. So why suddenly this dinner? I knew exactly why. Yesterday morning, Forbes had published its annual hospitality tech feature. My face sat on page 3. My company had just been valued at $92 million. And now, magically, my family wanted dinner. I texted back, "I'll be there." I pulled up to the country club at exactly 7 p.m. in my dented sedan. 6 months ago, I bought a luxury SUV, but I rarely drove it to family events. Bringing the old car was intentional. They expected the struggling daughter who was always one mistake away from falling apart, so I gave them what they recognized. When people feel superior, their guard drops. And when their guard drops, truth spills out. The valet glanced at the car with a flicker of contempt, but I handed him a 20 and walked toward the entrance without breaking stride. The heavy oak doors opened, and the blast of cold air hit me, carrying the scent of polished wood, overripe flowers, and the quiet arrogance of old money. As I walked down the long hallway, my heartbeat stayed steady. My palms stayed dry, but a small question whispered inside my mind. Why did I come? I knew who they were. I knew they never called unless they needed something. So why was I walking willingly into a place I once promised never to return to? The answer settled on me with a heaviness I almost recognized. I had been conditioned to normalize cruelty. That is what happens when love in your home is currency instead of care. You learn to tolerate disrespect because acknowledging it would mean accepting a truth too painful to confront. You keep showing up, believing that maybe this time you will be enough. It becomes a cycle, a psychological addiction to the smallest crumbs of affection. You keep returning, not because you trust them, but because a part of you still hopes for a different ending. I stopped at the door of the private dining room. Laughter spilled through the thick wood, loud and shallow and rehearsed. The kind of laughter people use when they want the world to think they are winning. I straightened my jacket, took one long breath, and reminded myself that I was not walking in to be saved or validated. I was walking in to observe. I was walking in to finish something that had been silently growing inside me for years. I pushed the door open. Warm amber light flooded the room. The table was set for 6. Dad, Mom, Jason, Tyler, Uncle Jeff. They looked like an expensive portrait of middle-class ambition. Dad was wearing his Navy suit, the one reserved for negotiations and illusions of power. Uncle Jeff was swirling champagne like a man who enjoyed the performance of wealth more than the actual thing. There she is. Dad's voice boomed across the room as he spread his arms in theatrical welcome. The prodigal daughter returns. Mom rushed forward in a cloud of perfume and forced affection. She hugged me tightly, her voice dripping with sweetness. "We missed you so much, darling. You look tired. Are you eating properly? Startup life must be draining." I stepped out of her grip. "I am fine. Actually, I am better than fine." Sit, Dad said, gesturing to the isolated chair at the far end of the table. We ordered the vintage champagne. Nothing but the best for tonight. I sat. I stared at the bottle. 1998, $300 a pop. Their motel chain hadn't turned a profit in nearly a year. They were drinking their debt, so Jason drawled, leaning back with a smug smile. We saw the article. 92 million valuation. Not bad for a little travel app. Of course, valuation does not mean liquid cash. Paper money until you exit. It is a promising start, Uncle Jeff added, pretending to be wise. But the hospitality business demands real assets. Real estate, brick, mortar, tangible foundations, not software. I took a slow sip of water. Is that why we're here? To discuss my paper money. Don't be defensive, Tyler muttered without lifting his eyes from his phone. They are trying to help. Dad has experience you should listen to. We are here to celebrate, Dad cut in, lifting his glass. To family and the future. Particularly the future of our business. They all raised their glasses. I didn't touch mine. We have big news, Mom said, smiling wide. We are expanding. Turning the flagship property into a luxury destination. A spa, a golf course, a transformation. It will be legendary. That sounds expensive, I said. It takes money to make money, Dad replied, his jaw tightening almost unnoticed. We have the vision. We have the experience. We just need a small bridge to clear a hurdle. Once the zoning permits hit, the investors will come. I scanned the table. Their heads bobbed in unison. They were united in their fantasy, blind to the cliff they were marching toward. And that, Dad continued, placing his glass down with a thud, is where you come in. The air shifted. Celebration vanished. The pitch began. We want to offer you an opportunity, Uncle Jeff said as he leaned forward. A chance to buy into the family legacy. We know your funds are tied up, but you have access to credit. You have status now. We need a bridge loan. Dad said the number like it was small. $1.5 million. Only until construction financing clears. We will pay you back with interest. And you will finally have a real stake in something that lasts. I stared at him. $1.5 million. They said it like it was a favor. You want me to lend you that. Invest, Jason corrected. In your family. Let us be honest. You have momentum, not mastery. You do not understand operations. What we built is real. Your app is luck. And after everything we have done for you, Mom added softly, the support, the upbringing, it just feels right that you contribute. You owe it to us. I almost laughed. They carried me. They hadn't carried me a single inch. I paid my tuition. I worked 2 jobs to launch my company. Dad told me to get a real job when I asked him to look at my first pitch deck. You have capital, Dad said, but no legacy. I looked at him and finally saw him clearly. The sweat at his hairline. The desperation beneath the authority. A man clinging to an identity built on borrowed confidence. His anger was not power. It was camouflage. A last attempt to intimidate me back into my childhood role. I closed my portfolio slowly. I am going to stop you there. Dad blinked. What did you say? There is no legacy. I opened the folder. Lakeside Resorts has been insolvent for 18 months. Your debt-to-equity ratio is catastrophic. No bank will touch you. I slid the credit documents toward him. Your occupancy rates are down 40%. Your flagship needs $3 million just to pass safety codes. You do not need a bridge loan. You need a resurrection. How dare you? Uncle Jeff rasped. These are private business matters. You have no right. I have every right, I said. You asked me for money based on lies. You are not building an empire. You are drowning in debt. Dad slammed his hand on the table. You ungrateful child. Who do you think you are? You made one app and suddenly you speak to me like this. It was not luck, I said quietly. And I did it without you. We made you tough, Dad snapped. Look at you now. I studied him. All his threats had become hollow now that I saw the truth behind them. A man who never expected his daughter to surpass him now faced the reality that she had surpassed him so far he could not even see the horizon I stood on. I am not investing, I said. And I am not lending. Then you are dead to us, he shouted, rising so fast his chair toppled behind him. You walk out of this room, and you are no daughter of mine. You are nothing. The door opened. My CFO stepped in, dressed in a sharp gray suit, calm and precise. The transfer is finalized, she said, placing a manila folder in front of me. The air tightened. What transfer? Mom asked. I opened the folder and slid the deed onto the table. I bought the note. Silence dropped into the room like a stone. What note? Dad whispered. The bank note, I said. The one for Lakeside Resorts. You defaulted 4 months ago. The bank sold the debt to a private investment firm. I bought the firm, so I own your mortgage, your land, your liabilities. I own all of it, and all of you. They stared at the deed. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Jason went pale. Tyler finally looked up from his phone. Uncle Jeff looked like his lungs had closed. Dad stared at me with a hollow expression, stripped of authority, stripped of illusions. You cannot do this, he choked. We are family. Yes, I said, which is why I am giving you 30 days to vacate the property before renovations begin. It will become a wellness retreat, the only profitable option left. 30 days, Mom cried. This is our life. This is everything. It was failing, I said. Now it has potential. I placed a check on the table. $200,000, a buyout, more than your equity is worth. Take it and start over. Dad's pride twisted his face. I will not take your pity. It is not pity, I said. It is severance. The room imploded. Mom sobbing. Jason and Tyler panicking over their soon-to-disappear trust funds. Uncle Jeff cursing under his breath. Dad screaming about betrayal. I watched for a moment, and then I slowly stood, while they tore each other apart over the remains of a business they had already lost long before tonight. I walked toward the door. Nobody noticed me leave. Outside, the cool night air felt like a new beginning. My SUV waited at the curb. As I opened the door, my phone buzzed with a final message from Mom. We can fix this. Please come back. For a heartbeat, I felt the old gravity, the familiar pull toward repairing what had always been broken. Then I deleted the message and blocked her. I drove away from the country club, the lights fading behind me, shrinking into the darkness like the end of a long nightmare. I wasn't just leaving them. I was leaving the version of myself that once needed them. Sometimes you do not gain power. Sometimes you reclaim it. And sometimes reclaiming it means letting an entire chapter burn to ash so you can finally breathe without smoke in your lungs. I watched my mother's tears slide down her face, not with satisfaction and not with guilt, but with a strange, hollow clarity. As if for the first time in my entire life, I was seeing her without the layers of performance she had perfected over decades. Her voice shook, brittle and breaking at the edges. This is our legacy. You cannot just take it away. I didn't flinch. Legacy only means something when it is built with honesty. Yours was built on loans and lies. Jason's jaw tightened, veins rising at his temples. You blindsided us. This is low, Morgan. Even for you. I turned my eyes to him, slow and steady. For me. His lips curled into a bitter half laugh. You think you're some kind of avenger now, walking in here and humiliating your own family. You think your money makes you powerful. My money? I said quietly. Or my mind? Jason's amusement died instantly. Because you had the same opportunities, didn't you? The same roof, the same food, the same parents. Yet somehow, you stayed exactly where you always were. Angry, entitled, dependent. He rose slightly from his chair before Dad shot him a warning glare. Sit down. Jason slowly lowered himself, but hatred radiated off him like heat. Mom sniffed loudly, still sobbing. We are your family, whether you like it or not. You can't push us out of our own lives. I folded my hands. I'm not pushing you out. I'm ending the cycle you created. Tyler finally spoke, his voice small for the first time. Are we really losing everything? I looked at the youngest brother who had always hovered at the edges of conflict, never taking sides, always choosing silence, because silence required no courage. Yes, unless you choose differently. Dad's fist clenched. That is enough. We are not negotiating with her. She is punishing us. This is revenge, plain and simple. I inhaled slowly. If I wanted revenge, I would have let the bank foreclose in public. I would have let your creditors swarm you like vultures. I would have let you drown in lawsuits. What I'm doing is giving you privacy. A controlled exit. A chance to leave with dignity if you choose it. Dad slapped the table. You don't get to talk about dignity. You don't get to decide what happens to this family. I held his gaze without blinking. That's where you're wrong. Because you decided that years ago when you taught me that love comes second and power comes first. And tonight, I'm simply speaking your language. Dad's breath grew shallow, his face turning a deeper shade of red. He looked like a king whose empire had vanished overnight. A king who suddenly realized his crown was borrowed. I rose from my chair slowly, and Elena placed another folder in front of me. I tapped it. This contains the updated terms. You have 30 days to vacate the property. After that, demolition begins. We will restore the land, modernize it, clean up the violations. You had your era. Now it's my turn. Mom sobbed harder. Tyler leaned back, overwhelmed. Jason stared at the table, jaw ticking as he tried to swallow the reality forming around him. Dad glared up at me. You think you've won? You think this is finished? I tilted my head slightly. Nothing is finished. Not yet. Because this wasn't a victory to me. This was only the beginning of a truth they had never been forced to face. I looked at Elena. Ready? She nodded. The board meeting is in 15 minutes. I turned back to them. We acquired your controlling shares in the resort's management company through secondary buyers. Effective immediately, I am the sole decision maker. Dad's mouth fell open. You bought out my partners. You bought out my own board. Why? I leaned closer, my voice soft enough to freeze the air. Because when someone builds their empire on the backs of their children, that empire deserves to fall by the hands of one. He swallowed hard, unable to speak. I took a step back. Before I walked away, I paused and let the silence stretch heavy and suffocating. Then I said the words I had carried for years. I never wanted to be your enemy. I wanted to be your daughter. But you forced me to choose. And this time, I chose myself. I turned and walked toward the door, Elena close behind me. The moment my hand touched the handle, Mom's voice cracked through the room like a fractured plea. Morgan, wait. I didn't turn. Not fully. Just enough for her to know I heard her. She trembled as she stood. You can't just destroy us like this. We're family. You are hurting us. Her words were desperate, crumbling under the weight of years of denial. I finally looked her in the eyes. You hurt me first. She broke again. A soft, helpless sob. Jason rose abruptly. So that's it. You get to walk away feeling superior. I met his glare. Superior? No, free. His nostrils flared. You'll regret this. Maybe. But I won't regret choosing peace over chaos. Dad finally mustered enough voice to spit out, You are no daughter of mine? I nodded once, a small, resigned movement. That's the closest thing to honesty you've ever said to me. And with that, I opened the door and stepped out. But the moment the door closed behind me, I felt it. The shift. The tension tightening like a string pulled back on a bow. They wouldn't accept this quietly. They wouldn't surrender. This was not the end of a war. It was the start of one. Elena leaned in. They're panicking. They'll do something. I know. That's why we're ready. She raised a brow. You think they'll fight dirty? I exhaled slowly as we walked down the hallway. They always have. And this time, they have nothing left to lose. The club's lights blurred in my peripheral vision as I replayed the faces I had just left behind. Broken egos, crushed pride, inflamed entitlement. A family that had built its identity on hierarchy would never survive being powerless. And they would never forgive the person who stripped that power away. Elena spoke quietly. Do you want to go straight to the board meeting? I shook my head. No. I need a moment outside. The air outside was cool, almost sharp, carrying the distant sound of crickets and muffled chatter from the club. I stepped toward the parking lot, and that's when I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy, rushed, determined. Jason. I didn't turn around immediately. I waited. Let him come closer. Let him think he had the upper hand. When he finally reached me, he grabbed my arm, not harshly, but with the entitled force of someone who believed he still had claims over me. Morgan, stop. You can't do this. I pulled my arm free. I already did. He stepped in front of me, blocking my path. His voice dropped to a simmering anger. To him. You blindsided us. I told him the truth. Jason scoffed. You think you're a hero. You think this makes you strong. It doesn't. It makes you cruel. I studied him. Cruel like the time you and Tyler convinced Dad to cut me out of the college fund because you wanted jet skis for summer break. His face paled. That was years ago, and it mattered. Every small cut adds up. Jason clenched his jaw. Dad will fix this. He always fixes everything. Not this time. He opened his mouth again, but his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His expression twisted. I frowned. What? He hesitated, then showed me the screen. Dad had texted him. 3 words. She isn't leaving. My chest tightened. He meant my mother. I walked past Jason, fast, my mind replaying the look in her eyes. Desperation. Fear. Collapse. She wasn't strong enough to accept losing everything. Not emotionally. Not mentally. I reached the club doors and pushed them open. The hallway was empty. Too empty. I walked faster. The dining room door was ajar. A soft clatter echoed from inside. When I stepped in, the room was dimmer. Mom stood by the table, clutching the envelope I had given them, her eyes swollen, her breathing shaky. Dad stood beside her, gripping a bottle of champagne by the neck like a weapon. Tyler hovered behind them. Terrified, Dad turned toward me slowly. You ruined this family, and now you expect us to walk away quietly. I stayed silent. He lifted the bottle slightly. We are not leaving. I stepped forward. Put it down. Mom whispered something I couldn't hear. Dad shook his head violently. His voice cracked with fury. You think because you have money, you can take what is ours. You think you can shame me, break me, end me. I held up my hand calmly. No one is ending you, Tyler whispered. Dad, please stop. But Dad's eyes were on me. Only me. You want to destroy us. So I will show you what destruction feels like. My pulse steadied. I wasn't scared. I was prepared. But I wasn't prepared for Mom's next words. If she takes the resort, what do we have left? Dad whispered. Nothing. And people with nothing are dangerous. I took one step closer. Don't do this. Dad laughed. You did this. You made me do this. And then he swung the bottle.